Okay, let's unpack this. You sent us a truly fascinating collection of online discussions and news reports, all centered around one rather extraordinary event. Katy Perry's recent 11-minute suborbital hop with Blue Origin.
Yeah, it really kicked up a storm online, didn't it?
It sure did. Our mission today is to really sift through all the buzz, the noise, and get to the core of what this event sparked in the public consciousness.
And what's immediately striking is just the sheer range of perspectives in the sources.
Yeah.
We've got a really lively debate unfolding on Reddit, on Judge My View.
Right.
Then there's more, straightforward factual reporting from the Times of India and the Economic Times.
Okay.
A detailed discussion on StirSpace about, well, what even is an astronaut anymore?
Ah, that old chestnut.
And a deeply engaged, often quite critical conversation over on Pop Culture Chat, looking at the broader societal implications. It's quite the spectrum.
Absolutely, from people questioning if it even happened.
Seriously.
So.
Oh, yeah. To those debating the ethics of it all, and of course, a huge amount of attention on Katy Perry herself. So let's dive right into the flight itself. It was April 14th, 2025. An all-female crew, including Katy Perry, Gayle King, Aisha Bowe, Amanda Nguyen, Carrie-Anne Flynn, and Lauren Sanchez. They made that Blue Origin trip.
And almost instantly, as you might expect, the internet had questions
And some pretty strong opinions.
That's one way to put it.
It really highlights the nature of our information age,
Yeah.
The Economic Times article pointed to this rapid proliferation of conspiracy theories.
Right, right.
Claims ranged from the whole thing being sophisticated CGI
Wow.
to that rather specific accusation of a fake hand appearing in the capsule.
It makes you wonder about the underlying drivers of that kind of immediate skepticism, doesn't it?
It really does. And the supposed evidence, I mean, it included the capsule doors seeming to shift during flight, the lack of any, scorching or burn marks on the capsule after it landed,
Okay.
and this rather peculiar-looking hand visible in one of the windows. It almost sounds like something out of a bad sci-fi movie. Yeah, but if we look at the expert debunking, which the Times of India covered, a much more practical picture emerges.
Okay, let's hear it.
So the fact that the capsule door can be operated from both inside and out, that isn't some flaw in the story. No, it's actually a safety measure, mandated by NASA, apparently, to ensure quick egress in case of an emergency wherever it lands.
Okay, that makes sense. And the lack of burn marks?
Well, these suborbital flights, they just don't reach the kind of speeds and altitudes that generate significant heat upon reentry. It's not like, coming back from orbit on the shuttle or Soyuz.
Right, much lower energy involved.
Exactly. So no dramatic scorch marks expected.
Okay. And that mysterious hand, the fake hand.
Ah, yes, the hand. Turns out that wasn't even part of this flight. The Times of India clarified the image was actually from way back in 2017.
Get out, seriously?
Yep. From a Blue Origin test flight that used a mannequin, they even gave it a great name, Mannequin Skywalker.
Mannequin Skywalker, love it.
For safety assessments. So a classic case of a compelling image getting, ripped out of context and leading to a totally false conclusion.
Wow. What's fascinating is just how quickly these, alternative narratives can gain traction, even with readily available factual information out there.
It really speaks to a certain human tendency, perhaps, to seek out the extraordinary or maybe just the conspiratorial.
Or distrust, yeah. It raises fundamental questions about trust in institutions, maybe, and just the power of a compelling story, regardless of whether it's true.
Precisely.
Okay, so it seems the flight was definitely real, despite all the online doubts. But this leads us straight into another huge area of debate you highlighted, the whole question of who gets to be called an astronaut.
Yeah.
This was a really active discussion on SaltSpace, wasn't it?
Absolutely. That StarSpace thread, it included a very direct statement from a former Trump administration official asserting, quite bluntly, you cannot identify as an astronaut.
Oof.
Which really crystallizes the core tension, right?
Yeah.
What are the qualifications, the experiences that truly earn someone that title? Is it just crossing a line, or is it more?
And the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, they actually have specific definitions for different roles in spaceflight, but astronaut isn't technically one of them. Is that right?
According to the SurSpace discussion, which references the FAA's own definitions, that's correct. They define terms like crew, flight crew, pilot, and rather interestingly, spaceflight participant.
Spaceflight participant. Okay.
And that last one, spaceflight participant, that seems to be the most accurate technical descriptor for Katy Perry and the others on that suborbital flight, essentially passengers.
Yeah.
People who aren't part of operating the vehicle.
So they're passengers on a very high altitude, very, very short ride. The Surf Space thread really dug into the vast difference between their 11-minute experience and, the years of rigorous training and demanding work of traditional astronauts.
Oh, definitely. There were some really insightful analogies being used.
Like what?
Like comparing cruise ship passengers to seasoned sailors, or someone taking a joyride in a race car versus being a professional NASCAR driver.
Yeah, okay, those work. Those comparisons really help illustrate the fundamental difference in skill, responsibility, and maybe contribution.
Exactly. Those analogies are incredibly effective in highlighting that distinction. And a key element that surfaced in both the Surf Space and the Challenge Me View discussions is this idea that the term astronaut often implies, well, more than just being there.
Right, it implies doing something.
Precisely. Actively navigating, conducting research, performing other productive work in space. This suborbital flight, while certainly an incredible experience for them, I'm sure, involved none of that.
Right.
One commenter on SureSpace even coined the somewhat tongue-in-cheek term half-astronauts,
Okay.
which, while maybe not the most diplomatic phrasing, it does capture the sentiment that simply being a passenger doesn't equate to the dedication and effort of career astronauts.
And there was definitely a feeling reading some of those Space comments that these commercial astronaut wings that are being awarded might be perceived as more of a gimmick.
Yeah, a gimmick more than a genuine recognition of astronautical achievement.
Right.
And that's a valid point, isn't it? When the criteria for earning such a prestigious title become, well, arguably less stringent, it naturally raises questions about the true value and meaning of that recognition.
It really prompts us to consider how we should acknowledge participation in this emerging era of commercial space travel. Is there a different term needed?
Maybe so. It's an ongoing conversation.
Okay, now moving beyond the technical stuff and the definitions, a significant chunk of the reaction, particularly in the Ranch New View and our pop culture chat discussions, centered on the ethics. The societal implications of this flight, the classic let them eat cake sentiment definitely made an appearance.
It did indeed. The comment from Lamb Fudge on Change Review really encapsulated this widespread feeling of frustration.
And what did they say?
Pointing out the stark contrast between the immense wealth required for such an undertaking by someone like Bezos, funding the rocket,
Yeah.
and the very real financial struggles faced by a large portion of the global population. This sentiment, let them eat cake, it's not new, is it?
Oh, definitely not.
It often surfaces during periods of economic disparity, highlighting this fundamental tension between the experiences of the ultra-wealthy and the struggles faced by the majority.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it, about the social contract and what responsibilities come with extreme wealth, especially in the public eye.
But there were counter-arguments raised in that same discussion, weren't there? The idea that, well, technology often starts this way.
Exactly. Users like Grand Octopus 64 and Fluffy B12 brought up historical parallels.
Like what, early computers?
Yeah, early personal computers, flat-screen televisions, things that were initially incredibly expensive, niche products for the wealthy.
Right.
And the argument is that these early adopters, they're just kind of help fund the research and development that ultimately leads to broader availability and affordability down the line.
So trickle-down technology, basically.
Sort of, yeah. But there was also the perspective, again from Church Me View, that space travel in its current, very limited form is, and I quote, low-key useless.
Ouch. Low-key useless.
Compared to other technological developments that have provided more immediate, tangible benefits to a larger number of people. The question was posed, beyond the thrill for the passengers, what practical good is coming from these brief tourist flights right now?
That really cuts to the heart of the perceived value proposition, doesn't it?
I think so. While the tech involved might have long-term potential, the immediate purpose of these suborbital flights is primarily experiential. It's a form of extreme tourism,
Yeah.
which some find difficult to reconcile with the pressing needs and challenges facing humanity back here on Earth.
And the criticisms went even further, particularly in the comment from Aviglia Moy on Change Me View. They connected the flight to broader concerns about Amazon's business practices.
Ah, right, the Bezos connection.
Yeah. Its impact on traditional businesses, the treatment of its workforce, and crucially, the environmental consequences in the face of, potential ecological crisis.
This perspective reframes the spaceflight not just as a frivolous expenditure, but as potentially quite tone-deaf, maybe even irresponsible, given the significant environmental challenges our planet is facing.
Yeah.
The potential pollution generated by launching rockets, even for short trips, becomes a major point of concern for many, especially when considering the urgent calls for greater sustainability.
And Lamfudge also circled back to the optics of the situation, drawing a sharp contrast between these, quote, fun space excursions for the very wealthy and space missions with clear scientific objectives, or, say, vital rescue purposes, like SpaceX bringing astronauts back from the ISS.
That's a crucial distinction people seem to be making. Missions that offer tangible benefits, even if undertaken by individuals or organizations that might face other criticisms.
Right.
They tend to receive less direct condemnation than purely recreational flights that appear to serve no broader societal purpose, beyond maybe inspiration, which is debatable.
The perceived contribution to society seems to be a really significant factor in how people are evaluating these private space ventures.
Absolutely.
Now let's shift our focus specifically to Katy Perry's involvement, because a lot of the heat seemed directed at her.
Understandably, perhaps, as the most globally recognized name on board.
Right. The pop culture chat discussion really delved into how the public perceived her participation, particularly considering the often intense parasocial relationship between fans and celebrities.
This is a really insightful angle. As one commenter on Trish Me View articulated, fans often develop expectations of their idols, right?
Yeah.
Hoping they'll align with certain values or demonstrate an understanding of broader social issues.
Yeah.
When Katy Perry participates in what's seen as an extravagant and exclusive 11-minute space trip alongside other wealthy individuals, it can unfortunately come across as superficial, maybe detached from the everyday realities experienced by many of her fans.
Exactly. There were comments expressing, like, unmet expectations and a perceived lack of empathy. Katy Perry herself was quoted as stating that the trip was about making space for future women and taking up space and belonging. However, a significant portion of online commentary viewed this statement as completely, well, the words used were beyond out of touch.
Yeah, the juxtaposition of her stated intentions, empowerment, belonging with the reality of a brief, incredibly expensive joyride for a select few, created a palpable disconnect for many.
It felt performative.
Exactly. Performative rather than genuinely embodying the ideals she mentioned.
And the ongoing criticism surrounding her past collaborations with Dr. Luke definitely played a role in shaping this perception, didn't it?
It seems so. The feeling that this association clashes significantly with her earlier girl power image.
Right.
As was pointed out in the Tringe Me View thread, her continued professional relationship with someone who has faced serious allegations. It creates a significant credibility issue for an artist who, early in her career, championed themes of female empowerment.
It fosters a sense of maybe inauthenticity.
Yeah, inauthenticity that can then color how her other actions, like this spaceflight, are perceived.
The reactions to her kissing the Earth upon her return were also quite telling. Some people online just describe the entire event as an underwhelming 11 minutes long influencer trip.
Ouch.
While others use really sharp sarcasm, comparing it to, like, a soldier returning from war. That level of hyperbole really underscores the depth of the negative sentiment.
The stark contrast in those descriptions just highlights the perceived triviality of the event against the backdrop of genuine hardship or, significant achievement.
Yeah.
The act of kissing the Earth, which might feel like a heartfelt gesture after a really substantial, challenging journey, felt almost disproportionate, maybe even comical, in the context of such a brief excursion.
And then we venture into the more imaginative corners of the internet.
Oh boy.
With the theories suggesting that the Blue Origin mission patch contained satanic symbols and the connections drawn back to imagery in her E.T. music video from years ago.
Wow. This really illustrates how existing narratives and sometimes quite outlandish interpretations surrounding a public figure can be woven into new, often unfounded, conspiracy theories.
The pattern-seeking brain at work.
Exactly. The human brain is wired to find patterns, and in this case, some individuals interpreted elements of the patch's design through a pre-existing lens of suspicion or perceived symbolic messaging in Katy Perry's past work.
The pop culture chat discussion even touched upon theories that Katy Perry herself might be experiencing regret over the flight.
Regret why?
Due to the persistent criticism and what some online observers have described as bizarre behavior in the aftermath. Though, who really knows?
Well, that speaks to the intense level of scrutiny celebrities are constantly under, doesn't it? Particularly when their actions are perceived as insensitive or misaligned with public sentiment.
Totally.
The suggestion of regret, whether it's accurate or not, reflects a potential awareness, or at least a public perception of awareness, of this significant negative backlash.
There was a pretty strong consensus in some of those discussions that her PR instincts seemed amazingly bad, and that she might genuinely be out of touch with reality. The comparison to the Titanic submersible incident kept coming up.
Yeah, the lack of widespread sympathy there.
Exactly. The lack of sympathy due to the perception of wealthy individuals prioritizing, well, frivolous spending over addressing real-world problems, that seemed to resonate with a lot of people regarding this flight, too.
Yeah, the tragic Titanic submersible event, unfortunately, became a stark reference point for perceived wasteful and self-indulgent activities undertaken by the ultra-rich. The comparison highlights a similar lack of public empathy for a space trip that was widely seen as unnecessary and exclusively for the privileged.
Even Wendy's, the fast food chain, weighed in with a tweet.
Wendy's. What did they say?
Just, can we send her back? Which, regardless of the intent, kind of serves as a pretty clear, albeit humorous, indicator of a certain segment of public sentiment.
Well, even the brands are dunking on it.
Right. And the environmental concerns were brought up yet again, some suggesting that this short space trip might have generated more pollution than an entire large-scale concert tour.
Which is a staggering thought, if true. The environmental cost is just a consistently recurring theme in the criticism surrounding private spaceflight.
It really underscores that tension between technological advancement for a select few and the broader, potentially negative impact on the planet we all share. The less than enthusiastic reception of her recent album 143 also came into the conversation.
Connecting it to her music career.
Yeah, some linking it to a broader sense of a career crisis. The idea being that maybe she was attempting to force a female empowerment moment with the spaceflight that ultimately fell flat and just came across as inauthentic and even tone deaf, especially given the album's reception.
That connects her spaceflight endeavor to her overall public image and current career trajectory. If her recent artistic work hasn't really connected with audiences, then a grand gesture like this spaceflight, if perceived as disingenuous or poorly executed, is likely to be met with further skepticism and criticism. It doesn't exist in a vacuum.
And finally, there was this observation in some of the discussions that she seems kind of stuck in a Tumblr-era pop mindset.
Tumblr-era pop, okay.
And hasn't evolved musically in the same way that maybe other artists who have maintained long-term relevance have.
Interesting. That suggests a potential stagnation in her artistic growth, which could contribute to a growing disconnect with current cultural trends and the evolving expectations of her audience.
Yeah. And when you couple that with actions that are perceived as out of touch with reality, like this flight, it creates a particularly challenging situation for her public persona.
So, wrapping this up, as we've explored through all these sources you sent, this brief journey to the edge of space ignited a really complex and multifaceted debate.
It really did, far beyond just the 11 minutes.
Exactly. It wasn't just about the validity of the flight itself, was it? It touched upon these fundamental questions of who earns the title of astronaut, the ethical implications of private space ventures in a world facing huge challenges, and the incredibly intricate, often fraught relationship between celebrities and their fans and public perception.
Ultimately, the discussions you shared really highlight a significant divergence, a real disconnect in how this event was perceived by those who were part of it up there.
And the vast majority of the public watching from down here on Earth.
It really does. And this deep dive leaves us contemplating some pretty big questions, I think.
Like what?
Well, as commercial spaceflight becomes more frequent, which it seems poised to do, how will our understanding and definitions of space exploration and those who participate in it, how will that inevitably shift?
That's a huge question. And what responsibilities do public figures carry when they engage in such extraordinary, potentially controversial activities that capture global attention like this did?
Yeah. What do they owe the public conversation when they take part in something so visible, so expensive, and so, well, debated? Lots to think about there.